Well, hello everyone, and welcome to EllieMD's Live Educational Series. I am EllieMD's social media manager and tonight's host, Brenda Rios. We're thrilled to have you join us as we continue to empower people to live healthier, longer lives. At EllieMD, we're more than just telehealth. We're a growing community grounded in education, innovation, and personalized care. Today, we're joined by Erin Seprish, a registered dietitian nutritionist known for helping people build a better relationship with food, their bodies, and their overall health. Erin brings a powerful blend of compassion and clinical insight, where her expertise in GLP-1 nutrition, disordered eating, and sustainable lifestyle changes. Her science-backed approach focuses on nourishment, not restriction, meeting clients where they are and guiding them forward. Whether it's navigating appetite changes, emotional eating, or fueling well on a GLP-1, Erin offers strategies that are both practical and empathetic. Erin, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us
Oh,
again.
thanks for having me again.
Of
Appreciate
course.
it.
And
Excited.
so I just shared a little bit about you, but can you share for the new people tuning in what got you started on this journey and what makes you passionate about it?
Yeah, so I decided I wanted to be a dietitian in high school. I found out I was actually very good at chemistry. And my chemistry teacher was like, what do you want to do with your life? And as a 17-year-old, I'm like, I don't know. I want to go to college and be away from my parents. That's what I want to do. So she said, I think you should be a dietitian. So she was like, I'll print something out for you. So the next day she had a list. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. I love health, and I love the way what nutrition plays, how nutrition plays a part in our health, in the big picture, but also very interested in making it very simple for people too. I like to do practical tips. If you follow any of my stuff, it's very easy, very practical. If it has more than 5 steps, I'm out. Like, we're not doing that. So if I don't want to do it, I know you don't want to do it. So trying to make things very practical, very easy, and making nutrition not so difficult to follow and eat well.
I love that. I felt like when I started my GLP-1 journey, I kind of knew the basics, and I'm sure that a lot of people on this call as well, they're
Mhm.
starting their peptide journey with GLP-1s. And as I mentioned, I kind of had a basic understanding of what nutritional changes I had to make. But when someone's starting a GLP-1, what are some of the biggest nutritional mistakes that you see that they're making early on this journey?
Yeah, so the biggest one that I probably see specifically nutrition related is under eating. So a lot of people undereat, especially protein. We're going to talk about protein. The world is run by protein right now. But a lot of people assume that just because you're not as hungry, that you should eat as little as possible. So skipping meals, not really making it a priority to get in those nutrients. So that then plays into, an increase in muscle loss, fatigue, hair loss, which I hear all the time, slowed metabolism. So, yes, a GLP-1 will reduce your appetite, but it doesn't reduce the actual nutrient needs that your body requires. So that's typically under eating is the biggest one that I see.
And how do GLP-1s change that hunger and fulfillment cues? Like, why are people not hitting the mark with their protein?
Okay. Yeah, so we know that it changes with fullness because of delayed gastric emptying, right? So it kind of slows everything down. So you feel full faster because of the delayed gastric emptying, but you're also feeling full longer as well. So, from being on a GLP-1, you start eating and then you hit that threshold and you're like, I can't do anymore. I feel the fullness. So that cue has changed to where you're not just feeling it like how you used to before. You're feeling it much sooner and you're feeling that fullness a lot longer. Um, there's also an increase in the satiety hormones as well. So we're fuller longer, we're more satisfied. Um, but as far as like the hunger cues, we know that a GLP-1 impacts the brain by reducing the food noise, which typically a lot of people will have the food noise, which triggers their hunger. Um, and it blunts your hunger signals in general. So people may forget to eat, genuinely forget to eat, or it may just not be top of mind anymore. So then they'll accidentally start skipping meals. But I'm trying to think what else to say. With the hunger cues, because they are blunted, they're less reliable. So working on like a structured plan of eating, making sure you're eating around the same time every day, or just having a plan is much more important to make sure we're not skipping meals, we're getting the nutrients that we need, so that, this can kind of, you can do this in a healthy way.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned planning. I feel that that's something that had helped me. I had hit a few weight plateaus and I just went back and I started mapping
Hmm.
out, okay, what am I eating and where am I missing my mark on protein? So for anyone who feels as if they're not eating enough, what does
Hmm.
that look like when appetite is low and what are some strategies that they could start to plan out?
Yeah. So making a plan basically. And that's not sitting back and meal prepping and doing all of this work. It's just saying, okay, I have to make sure I'm eating at least 3 times a day. Like I have to make sure I'm doing this. It's not okay. I know it's not okay to not nourish my body and to skip. So consistent meals, and I know meals to people sometimes whenever I work with patients, a meal when you're on a GLP-1 seems a little overwhelming, because you're relating it back to like a lot of people would eat just like one big meal during the day, and that's they would call it quits, whereas you can't do that now. So I talk about like eating episodes. It's like an episode at least 3 times a day. You're eating something at least 3 times a day, and that's a start. Um, but focusing on protein and fiber, making sure we always have protein and fiber present at each episode of eating. um, let's see, eating enough. So trying to hit those protein goals, trying to hit the fiber goals. And you'll know you're eating enough based on how you feel, right? So if you're constantly low energy, tons of fatigue, hair is falling out, you're likely not nourishing in a way. And now we need to make sure that we're consistently making sure we're hitting the protein, we're hitting the fiber, we're making a plan. And some apps can actually be really helpful with that. I know there is a GLP-1 specific app now. It's called Me Again. I think it's only for Apple users, but it's great on, here's your protein goals, here's your fiber goals, here's your hydration goals. It tracks a million other things too, but that is a great tool to make sure that you are consistently going in and you're getting the nutrients that you need throughout the day. So consistent meals, trying to hit those goals, tracking if you need to, again, tracking protein, fiber, not necessarily calories, because we're really focused on protein and fiber. Um, and yeah, tracking hydration too, helpful.
And going into fiber a little, we just had Carrie ask a question. How much fiber are we supposed to eat?
So minimum, it's going to sound a lot, but 25 grams is what we're shooting for related to fiber. That's what I notice. A lot of people focus on the protein, but in order for us to keep the gastric, stuff moving along, and not getting the constipation, the fiber is super important. So I would say a minimum of 25 up to 35. But if you are used to not eating a ton of fiber, make it a gradual increase. So you're not just like really crampy and hurting yourself.
hmm Deborah asked, what are some healthy snacks with protein and fiber?
Okay, so love this question. Um, so protein and fiber is what I suggest for every snack. We'll go into meals a little bit later, but every snack, protein and fiber pair well together. They pair well together because they help balance your blood sugar by not just eating a carb and spiking your blood sugar. The protein actually helps stabilize your blood sugar when you eat the carb and the protein together. So I always like to give the example of like a Greek yogurt and berries. So you've got a super heavy, high protein cup of Greek yogurt, and then you're adding some fibrous berries in there. That's a great one. Um, String cheese with a fruit. Love string cheese. We go through it like crazy in my house. Um, Fruit and peanut butter. So apple peanut butter, banana peanut butter. Trying to think other ones that I pair it with. Cheese and crackers, anything that's going to be that protein and carb, we're going to combine together, but trying to look for like those complex carbs that are going to get us a little bit more fiber, like a fruit is a great example.
And going into protein a little bit more, so you mentioned how protein can help with the energy, with avoiding hair loss. Can you talk a little bit more on the muscle mass part of it and why it's so critical to have protein if you're on a GLP-1 and how to protect that muscle mass?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you've probably heard that or at some point you probably heard that proteins are like the building blocks of our body. So that's because protein is involved in the formation and maintenance of every cell in our body. It affects muscles, it affects bones, it affects hormones, all of these things. So when we're rapidly losing weight or we're having weight loss in general, it can lead to a muscle loss without the adequate amount of protein, which is why everyone talks about protein on a GLP-1. So muscle is essential for our metabolic health and how well and basically our metabolic health is just how well our body creates, uses, and stores energy while keeping our bodies functioning. So it's important for maintaining muscle, and we need muscle in order to have healthy metabolic health. If that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions coming in, so let me try to get through a little bit more of those. So, Brittany says that she's hitting her protein, but still is seeing some hair thinning. Is
Okay.
there anything that you would recommend?
Yes, multivitamin. So adding them, if you do not take, that's later, I'm going to talk about it. I preach multivitamins. So if you're on a GLP-1, you need to be on a multivitamin. I would start taking that and see if it helps.
Awesome. Yeah, Matt says he takes biotin supplements.
So you can take additional things. I always have people start with a multivitamin. And then what I really suggest is for people in the middle of your GLP-1 journey, go get your labs checked and see what you're deficient in. So if you're deficient in biotin, if you're deficient in vitamin D, then we can kind of really start addressing those nutrients that are lacking. But a multivitamin across the board is going to be great.
And there's another question that came in, and I kind of want to tie it into one that I was going to ask. So, what if your appetite has not subsided yet? So,
Mm.
for those that are maybe still struggling to eat also a full meal, what are realistic protein targets for that type of individual?
Yeah, so someone who so low, I'm trying to think, low appetite, um, but realistic. So typically a good rule of thumb would be like 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal or per snack or per event or episode or whatever you want to call it whenever you eat. Um, and that should having that goal and trying to hit that should kind of help. So that looks like 3 to 4 ounces of a chicken breast. That's a cup of Greek yogurt, a cup of cottage cheese, um, 3 large eggs. Trying to think, a can of tuna, a can of salmon, 4 ounces of salmon. But then there's also plant-based options too. So it's not just meat. I think a lot of people think protein is meat, but there's uh, beans, lentils, tofu, seeds like flaxseed, chia seeds. Add those into your yogurt for a little extra fiber, a little extra protein, because they carry both nuts, edamame. But another tool or another tip I give a lot of people, especially if they're not feeling well, but they know they still need to nourish their body, is sipping on bone broth. So, like a chicken broth or a beef broth. Each cup of bone broth is about 10 grams of protein, and sometimes you could find one that's a little bit higher. But that's a great way you're not feeling well, you don't really have an appetite, you don't really want to put anything in your body, but you can still make sure you're getting some protein in. And then also cooking with it. So if you're gonna cook a rice or a quinoa or something like that, cook it in the bone broth or add the bone broth packets to like your gravy. I've seen somebody do that before to
Mhm.
get some additional protein. So you can pack a lot into these small little portions that you're eating.
And I know you mentioned some other foods such as the Greek yogurt, the string cheese, and to hit those protein goals a little bit easier. But what does a balanced GLP-1 friendly plate actually look like? What do you see?
So a balanced plate is going to be whether you're on a GLP-1 or not. This is typically what you recommend is think of the plate. We're going to want half of the plate non-starchy vegetables, a quarter of the plate the protein, a quarter of the plate complex carbohydrate, and then somewhere in there a fat. I typically don't focus on the fat because usually people will use a fat in some type of cooking, like you use an olive oil or avocado oil or something like that.
Mhm.
So that is typically what I have the plate look like, and that will cover the macronutrients that our body requires, which is protein, carb, fat. Um, but yeah, we need all those components in order to make a balanced, healthy meal. So again, half the plate non-starchy vegetables. So you're getting that fiber, which again, I keep talking about fiber. Quarter of the plate protein, quarter of the plate carb, and then a fat mixed in there somewhere.
And do you think that spacing out protein throughout the day can help with energy or muscle preservation? Like, it's something I've also seen online where you should just first thing in the morning get 40 to 50 grams of protein in, or I've also seen people who kind of just space out smaller meals in between with the equal
Mhm.
amount of protein. Is one better than the other?
So I think spacing out is great. Is there specific timing? I don't think so because all of our bodies are a little different. Just it kind of depends on your metabolism. I think waking up in the morning and having a protein, breaking that fast, that's why it's called breakfast, is great. It gets you started, gets your brain started, gets your body started. Um, but I think, yeah, I would definitely say spacing it out. And I feel like on a GLP-1, you have to space it out because you can only eat so much at a time. And that's going to also help stabilize your energy and improve your satisfaction or your satiety all day long. And that's something I really like about a GLP-1 is it's really helping people who typically just eat like that one meal a day I mentioned. You physically can't do that anymore. So it's forcing people to be more consistent with their meals, space it out, spread your intake out to sustain your energy throughout the day. And then regular protein is helpful because it helps slow digestion, stabilizes your blood sugar, like we talked about. It prevents those energy crashes and just helps you feel fuller longer and maintain that consistent energy throughout the day.
Mm. Now, what about fasting? This actually comes from Brandon. So, if someone's like spacing out their meals, what about the opposite where someone is fasting? Brandon said that GLP-1 has helped him tremendously with longer fasts.
Okay.
What have you seen on that end?
So I haven't seen, it's interesting because the what I have seen about fasting, so in the general world, as from my evidence-based, et cetera, fasting is not typically what I go to for clients. I actually see people who, not GLP-1 separate, I see people who eat more and we're able to speed up their metabolism that way, and it works much better. In the GLP world, in the GLP-1 space, I've seen that fasting will work better for males, but not females.
Mm.
So there's, I don't want to speak too much on it because I'm not as educated, but I have heard that for a man, fasting can be much more effective than for a female. But again, whenever it comes to like energy, fatigue, all of that, eating consistently throughout the day and just having that fast be overnight is beneficial from what I've seen from the evidence.
That's interesting. And going back to hydration, you had mentioned like protein, fiber, hydration. So, how can hydration and electrolytes support overall tolerance for GLP-1s?
Yeah, so hydration. So dehydration is a common side effect. I'm sure some people who are on this call have felt the results of dehydration. You know, you get the headaches or fatigue. Sometimes it's related to constipation, nausea. So dehydration is common because whenever we lose like that receptor to eat, we also lose a little bit to drink our water or consume. We lose the desire or the thirst cue a little bit. Um, so hydration is key. I tell people to make sure that you always have your water bottle with you. It's, you know, it's your emotional support water bottle. I said that I think on our last educational one, but it's your emotional support water bottle. You should have it with you at all times. Find what water you actually like. A lot of people, temperature is a big deal.
Mm.
So if you like it ice cold, get you well, I have a Walla 40 ounces. Ice in it all the time because it's got to be cold. If it's room temperature, will not. But then some people need it room temperature. So kind of figuring out what you like. Um, but hydration, obviously important for preventing dehydration. Electrolytes, so like sodium, potassium, magnesium, will support hydration by helping your body absorb and retain fluids. So it can improve the side effects we mentioned, like the headache, the nausea, the constipation. And electrolytes are especially important when our food intake or our appetite is lower, right? So we're eating less, we're taking in less of those electrolytes that our body needs. And I always recommend, at least getting electrolytes once a day, a packet of electrolytes in your water once a day, but then including that multivitamin like we talked about. And that's going to help bridge those nutrient gaps that we're creating by eating less.
And what's your typical routine like with getting all of your nutritional needs and wants? I know I want to start adding more collagen to my daily routine, but it's just
Hmm.
I just always end up pushing it like, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow.
Hmm.
So is there any easier ways to for people to start putting in like their multivitamins, adding in fiber, collagen? What have you
Hmm.
seen works best?
So I try to do more whole foods, um, and try to just keep like one protein shake a day. But typically my breakfast, I use the LEMD protein powder, that has the collagen in it. So doing the protein powder that has the protein, the collagen, it has additional fiber in it. Um, Adding potentially additional collagen, I think one scoop is what, like 20, 30 grams. Um, of protein, adding some fruit in there, adding some seeds in there. So I'm getting some good fiber. And that's like a big bulk of your protein and fiber for the day that you can get in one protein smoothie in the morning. Also, I've seen people put collagen in their coffee. So I'll do espresso because I'm bougie. So I'll put collagen in my espresso. So that's a great way. And then just making sure my lunch and my dinner or my other episodes of eating have a large source of protein where it's kind of what I listed off, like at least 4 ounces if it's meat or a can of tuna or something like that. Um, and yeah, having lunch and dinner, make sure there's a large protein there. But then we also have the non-starchy vegetables and a complex carbohydrate. So I'm getting the fiber as well. So that kind of maps out my day. Um, and then water, just chugging water all day long. And then trying to think what else I do. I haven't been asked this question. Sorry. Electrolytes once a day. I take my multivitamin once a day. Yeah, that's me.
And what's so interesting is now there's just I feel like there's a lot of new trendy products coming out. Like
Hmm.
I saw one on TikTok shop that's a matcha lemonade, but it's a protein powder. So
Oh,
just I guess one serving is 20 grams of protein. So I felt like that was just a really good way to not only get protein, but also get good hydration in. So
yeah.
I think that the timing now is just so perfect for finding all of these products.
Yeah. What I would say for people will show me their protein shake. I just always steer people clear of whenever it comes to like sugar alcohols. Sometimes those can be sneaky and get in there. So anything that's like erythritol, anything that ends in an OL, basically
Mhm.
erythritol, uh like maltol. So I just tell people kind of steer clear of those on a GLP-1 because it could potentially cause diarrhea, like really upset your stomach.
Mm.
So if you are looking at protein shakes, even the clear proteins, all of that, just take a look and make sure there's no sugar alcohol so it's not causing diarrhea and upsetting your stomach.
Wow, good to know. So anything ending in OL.
Oh well, that's
What
what I tell them.
else?
Like,
Yeah. What else should people look out for items that might not necessarily be ideal for them on this journey?
yeah. So I tell people to. I'm typically a dietitian where all foods fit. Like we will find a place. You read in my bio, like disordered eating is another one of my passions, and we really try to make food a very safe happy place for people whenever it hasn't been in the past. So I typically say all foods can fit, but what we don't want to do on a GLP-1 is do foods that make you feel sick. So foods that are going to make you feel sick are super high fat foods. If you've been on a GLP for one for a while and you go and have like, trying to think of an example, like a heavy Alfredo pasta, you're likely your tummy's gonna hurt a little bit because it's such a high fat item, right? Fried foods probably not gonna feel great. Sugar, any type of like sugary sweets, probably not gonna feel great. Large portions, if you're eating large portions, you're likely not listening to those fullness cues that are telling you to stop. Um, and alcohol, avoid it on a GLP-1. I would not do it.
Yeah, now people who might have those types of, I wouldn't say bad, but those relationships with food that are not ideal for someone on a GLP-1 journey. Perhaps maybe they still like their piece of chocolate cake at
Mhm.
night. What are some ways that they can start to have that mind shift in changing that relationship with the food?
Yeah, so I think that kind of goes into allowing all foods to fit. That's a great question. I wasn't prepared for that one, but kind of talking about relationship with food. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking specifically like you're always used to having a dessert at night, and now you're on a GLP-1, you're like, what do I do? Um, I think just kind of seeing how your body feels afterwards. So we're not labeling foods as good and bad, and I'll kind of talk about this a little bit later, but we're not labeling as good and bad. The chocolate cake isn't bad, but when you eat it, how do you feel afterwards? You
Mm.
know? So if you have a couple bites, you're satisfied, happy, move on, great. If you sit down and eat the whole thing, how do you feel? Like we want to make sure we're not self-sabotaging this journey. We want to be in tune with how our bodies feel after we eat something. So I think there is a place for things like that. But if it's an every night thing, maybe it goes into a once a week thing, or a lot of it, a GLP-1 works on the hypothalamus of the brain, and a lot of your cravings go away. So you may not even want it anymore. It may just be a special occasion kind of thing.
Yeah, and for people who, I know we're skipping a little bit forward, but we'll go back to the questions that we might have missed. For anyone who they might have been dieting for years or following a certain food restriction or maybe just eating certain foods for
Mhm.
years, how do they begin to rebuild trust with food?
I love this question. Um, I love this question because this was another reason why I wanted to become a dietitian is I wanted to help people have a healthier relationship with food after being in the dieting world for so long. Um, One thing that I really like about the GLPs is the mental calm that it gives you around food noise. Um, so where you're able to actually sit back and make nutritious choices that serve your body well. So for those who have dieted their whole life or are always, starting over on Monday, which I feel like is a lot of us, it allows you to look at food from like a neutral perspective, right? So I think it could be super healing and allow you to rebuild that trust by being able to step back and say, okay, what do I need to put on the plate? What's going to serve my body well? I'm not looking at good and bad, but what is going to nourish me? And then you can focus on how you feel after you've eaten something, like we mentioned the dessert. How do you feel after you've eaten it? If it's a well-balanced meal, you're feeling energized. You're having good bowel movements. Um, you have the brain, the mental clarity because you're nourished versus eating something that's like heavy, fried. You'll likely experience some of the side effects we talked about. Like you could have an upset stomach, you could have cramping, you could have acid reflux. So it allows you to take almost like I know I'm seeing hearts, which I love because I'm so passionate about this, but it allows you to kind of take that mental struggle away from food and focus on how you feel with how you're fueling your body, right? So rebuilding trust, like how do we feel after eating? Focus on the consistent eating, removing good and bad, the good and bad mindset. Let's let food just be neutral, see what feels good. Um, how does this serve my body? I want to serve my body well. Yeah, so hopefully I answered that a little bit of it kind of it gives you so much calm in the brain to where you can sit back and you're like, okay, how do we rebuild from here?
hmm No, and I love that concept that there's no good foods or bad foods because I feel like even with when I started my GLP-1 journey, I still allowed like those little moments of
Mhm.
maybe in and out here and there, but I made sure that I was still getting the more
Yeah.
balanced meals, so making sure that I had already hit my protein goals and thinking about it that way helped me not feel bad about it. It's like, no, I felt like this was deserved or I worked out enough. But there's like, yeah, days where, at least for
Yes.
me, I'm just back, just really busy and I'm like back to back, like
Hmm.
having DoorDash. And I think about like, okay, maybe those weren't the best choices, but we'll do better tomorrow.
And then thinking like when you remove the thinking of good and bad, like, yes, I'm on a GLP-1, but am I going to say no to having ice cream with my 3-year-old? Absolutely not. Like,
hmm
but having that freedom and that flexibility to say, I can say yes to some things. Am I going to go overboard? No, because I'm going to feel terrible afterwards. But I can say yes to those things, but let's make sure that, like, I had a great lunch before we went and had ice cream or whatever it might be. So kind of removing that guilt or I need to make up for it or I feel bad because I did fast food or whatever. Let's make food neutral and again take it back to how do I feel after I've had a well-balanced meal. I feel energized. I'm likely having good bowel movement. I have mental clarity versus I had fast food. Now I feel sluggish. Like I feel my tummy hurts. So let's take it back to that. And that's a good way to kind of neutralize food and just see what is going to serve me well, what's going to nourish me well.
And I love that. And this comic came in and I definitely felt it, but she says, I felt like GLP-1 helps me feel like all foods are safe because I'm not obsessing over my
Yes.
weight. So for me, it helped disordered eating. And I
Yes.
really like that comment. I feel like a lot of people would resonate with that.
Yeah. And I have a few disordered eating clients or patients that I have suggested in a very gentle way. We've talked about it, and I'm just like, I think this will help your mind so much. Not necessarily about weight loss, but let's just get your mind calmed down so then we can focus on everything else.
hmm Yeah. Joshua says, I tell myself that cheesecake isn't going to taste as good as I'm going to look and feel. Um, and I want to go back to side effects a little, but just continuing on this topic a little bit more. So, how can nutrition support a healthier relationship with food long term, even after GLP-1s?
So let me think. So I know a lot of people will be on GLP-1s for life. They love it. They're going to stay on it for forever. But I know a lot of people will get on them, reach their goal, and then try to get off. So how nutrition can help a healthier relationship with food long term is by shifting that mindset we talked like we mentioned a little bit. So shifting from focusing on restriction, what I can and cannot have. I'm on this. We don't want this to be a diet for you. That's my biggest passion. I don't want this to be another diet that you're going to fail and have to start again, right? You are literally biohacking your body by using peptides. It's amazing that we can do this now. But shifting the focus from restriction to nourishment. Again, how is this going to nourish my body? How is this going to serve my body? Balance and then the body awareness I've been talking about with how you physically feel after you eat whatever it is that you chose to eat. So if you can practice that now while being on a GLP-1, it will help with those long-term behavior patterns that we're hoping to shape for whenever you eventually, if you decide to get off a GLP-1. Um, so learning to eat balanced meals, adequate protein, fiber, um, that can really help just rebuild the trust and hunger fullness cues because you're practicing it now, and then whenever you get off or you start tapering off and that hunger cues come back, fullness cues come back, you can start saying, okay, this is what I ate and this is what does well for me. So then we're not just going off the deep end and just grabbing whatever we can based on cravings. We're like, this is what worked, this is what satisfied me. I can keep repeating this and I can start kind of building that trust again with food. Um, and then developing sustainable habits. So the flexible food choices, like I said, I'm not going to say no to my kiddo wanting to go get ice cream. I'm not going to do that. But being flexible with those foods, eliminating the good and bad, being mindful with our eating. So how do we feel? Listening to our body and consistent fueling. So not just saving up for that one big meal a day. Let's keep that consistent eating pattern as we taper off or get off of a GLP-1. And I think this helps people view food as this is kind of what somebody else said in the comments, but it helps people view food as support for health rather than something to control or to fear. So a lot of people think they can control based on what they eat, or there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of guilt. But this kind of shifts the brain to say, we're viewing food as a support for my health. Nutrition is support for my health. It's not, something to be afraid of or, go down that rabbit hole.
And taking a step back, just I had seen a few comments where people were mentioning their side effects. Are there any nutritional strategies that you recommend to help reduce nausea, fatigue, or
Mhm.
GI discomfort on GLP-1s?
Yeah, so a lot of great things that nutrition can help with. We touched on a few already. So nausea is staying hydrated, making sure you're getting that water in. Sparkling water can be really helpful sometimes with nausea. Um, and eating the small, frequent meals, eating the little meals throughout the day can help. Trying to think, avoiding the things we talked about, avoiding. So the heavy, the greasy, the sugar, that's going to help a lot with nausea. Fatigue, if you are fatigued, I see two things. Either you're not eating enough, which we talked about under eating, under fueling, or if a lot of people experience fatigue like the day after their shot. Um, so giving yourself a schedule to make sure you are eating is helpful. So even I've had people set an alarm on their phone, which might seem like extreme, but if you're constantly forgetting lunch every day, we got to do something that's going to literally stop your brain and say, nope, you need to eat. Um, and then for fatigue, again, under eating. So again, tracking in an app would be helpful. Again, not calorie tracking, but like that tracking your protein, tracking your fiber, giving yourself little goals throughout the day will help you as well. Um, and then for GI discomfort, so diarrhea, constipation, we're looking for more fiber, more hydration to assist with that, and that will typically help. Sometimes a probiotic, just depending. And then like indigestion, acid reflux, that's going to be smaller meals, chew your food thoroughly, eat slowly, stay upright after you eat. Some people you might have to move your dinner time a little sooner than before you go to bed. But those are kind of the tips that I have seen to work. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about the not laying down immediately after eating. So
Mhm.
is there a time that you recommend where people should still stay up after eating?
So not that I don't want to make a recommendation because I don't have anything evidence based, but I mean I can tell you like I have acid reflux like crazy whenever I'm on a GLP-1. I don't know what it is. That's my only side effect. If that's my biggest complaint, I'm good. But I mean I eat dinner at 5. Like I eat dinner at 5. I'm an early bird there, but that's 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever before I go to bed. So I think it's just individualized. But that's something I can look into more so I can actually see if there's any evidence related to the time.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that some of the people that you've worked with will even set an alarm on their
Mhm.
phone to either work out or eat a certain meal. And you had mentioned an app. There's a lot of comments asking about the app that you had talked about. What was
Yeah,
the name of
it's
that one?
it's called Me Again.
Me.
And it's only on Apple right now. I think they're working on an Android version, so don't shoot the messenger. It's just the one that I like. Um, it's the one I like, it's the one I use. You can track, it's really cool. You can track protein, fiber, hydration. You can track obviously weight, your pictures. You it actually has a really cool feature where you can take a picture of your meal and it analyzes it and tracks it for you, like saves you time. Hello. Um, it will track your pictures. You could do like a picture of your body, a picture of your face, and you can literally see your progression, which is super cool. What's another feature I like? Oh, it tracks your injection day. So I'll get a ping on my phone, hey, it's injection day, which is very easy to forget when you have a toddler. So it'll say injection day, and it will say, what does it say? Like take medication out of the fridge so it can become room temperature. Make sure you have a protein. Make sure you've had water with electrolytes. Okay, now take your injection. Okay, now have another protein. Like it's really, really cool if y'all want to check it out.
Nice. Me again?
Me again, yeah.
Again. Yes. And Jeannie asks, or she has a statement that says, it's so hard to eat even when you know you need to eat. And I definitely had felt that. So for people that might think that they're eating against the medication, but they're still trying to fuel their body, is there any recommendations that you would give?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting question because I hear a lot about, low appetite. I've been there. I think that's why I'm able to speak about it passionately too, because I've gone through this process. Um, but having the mindset of like you have to fuel your body to survive, like period. Like that's biology. Um, and a GLP-1 is a tool. It's not going to nourish for you. That's not what it does. So again, the biggest miss that I see is people under eating, but I think if we're focusing on what we're eating and making choices that are going to serve our body well, like again, focusing on protein and fiber, if large meals, which we probably can't eat anyways, if that seems too cumbersome or you're like, I don't have an appetite, I can't do that, let's get just a protein and a fiber on the plate. Like, let's grab an apple and some peanut butter. Let's grab a string cheese and some berries. Let's try to do a Greek yogurt and some berries and some seeds. Like, let's do those little meals so that you know that you're nourishing your body, you know you're getting in what you need, but you're taking it in very small bits. Um, yeah, that's what I got for that.
And are there any other habits that someone should do now to start building food trust and maybe protecting their muscle metabolism beyond the medication? So, for what are some habits that someone can do now to protect muscle metabolism and especially food trust beyond the medication?
Okay. So we're focusing on sustainable habits. Again, I mentioned we don't want this to be another diet, right? You're using peptides as a tool to put you in a healthier place. So um, eating consistently um, is going to help with your metabolism. Is going to keep it going. Protecting muscle. We talked about like the protein and working on building that balanced plate we talked about. So paying attention to what that feels like, the energy, the mental clarity, mood. We're going to so we're gonna focus on protein, focus on fiber, focus on the plate, add in a multivitamin, add in electrolytes once a day. Um, Another great way to protect your muscle mass is to incorporate strength or resistance training. I think we all know that. We all need to do that. Um, that helps protect our lean muscle mass, especially whenever there is weight loss involved. And exercising in some capacity also helps maintain our metabolic rate or keep our metabolism up and going. Um, we can practice the balanced eating, like I mentioned. So, balance eating, nourishment over restriction, challenging yourself to keep those foods neutral, like really taking this time and taking advantage of the fact that your mind is kind of calm to practice that neutrality with food. Um, and help rebuild trust and reduce the fear and guilt around eating. So, other sustainable routines that you could potentially work on is, sleep. Sleep impacts our bodies in ways. and stress management as well. So those are all long-term like weight sustainability things that we can do.
I love that. And is there any final parting words or advice that you'd want to leave us with?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I mean, y'all have heard it. If you follow me on social, I say you got to eat consistently. Find what works for you. Again, the bone broth tip. If you are feeling very poorly, you might want to talk with your provider. But in order to get like a 10-gram cup of bone broth. Like you could probably get that down. If you're not on a multivitamin, please, 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 please start a multivitamin. That's going to help with nutrient gaps that you've created. And yeah, if you need additional assistance with nutrition, diet, all of those things, please reach out to a registered dietitian nutritionist. We are trained to specifically help you and make it personalized too, where I'm not just going to blanket statement and say everyone needs to be at 150 grams of protein. No, we're going to make it personalized, individualized for you. So please reach out to someone that can help, myself or someone else.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erin. And thank you all for joining us. If you were invited to this call by someone, please reach out to them. Erin, thank you so much again. I'm definitely going to take that bone broth advice and go to Costco sometime this weekend.
There you go. Costco's a great. There's a lot of great options there.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again, Erin, and everyone else. Have a good night.